This is the companion screencast also about end of module 6 quiz question 3. That supply and demand framework to understand who buys and who sells permits is a little bit harder, I admit, than the algebraic method, but it provides useful intuition about why one firm is buying and why another is selling, and it provides a little better insight into what, say, permit prices will be or permit quantities sold will be in these problems where there's a discrete number of permits exchanged, 10 or 12 or whatever. If there's thousands, then our straight line approximations are fine. Anyway, so I'm coming back to the two parts of this problem. First, how many permits will be traded and what will be the price of the permit. So let's think about where these firms start at when the command and control regime is in place. They've got, each has got 20 permits. That means they have to clean up 10. So that 10th ton of pollution cost firm 2 $1,200 to clean up. And if they could get out of cleaning up that 10th ton, they'd be willing to pay $1,200. Now, likewise, for firm 1, they've cleaned up 10, and their cost of cleaning up that 10th ton was exactly $400. They could clean up one more ton, clean up 11 tons for $440. So $440 would be their opportunity cost of supplying the first permit, and then their opportunity cost of supplying those permits goes up by 40 as firm 2 buys successive permits. Their willingness to pay falls by 120 because their ninth ton to clean up costs $1,200 minus 120, which would be $1,080, and so on. So let's pull that information into the supply and demand graph. Let's think about firm 1. They'd be willing to supply 1 permit if they could get $440 for it. I'm trying to draw a line just below that 450 line there on this graph paper. So that's our first step on that supply curve. They'd be willing to supply a second permit if they could get, that's 440. If they get 440 plus 40, that's 480 for it. And then they'd be willing to supply a third if they could get 520 for it. And then 560 for the next one. 600 for the one after that. My 40 unit stair steps aren't perfect, but anyway, close enough. And then I think we're going to need to, let's just map this supply curve out for a little bit further. 640 for the 6th permit supplied to market, 680 for the 7th, 720 for the 8th, 760 for the 9th, and then 800 for the 10th. And that's all we're going to need for both these permit trading problems that are part of this longer problem 3. All right, that's our supply curve of permits. Let's pick a different color for our demand. Let's go to orange, this bright orange for our demand curve. Remember that firm 2 would pay $1,200 for the first one, $1,080 for the next one, $960 for the one after that. I'm doing this in my head. I suppose I should have written this out a bit. $840 for the next. Oops, I went overshot there a little bit. $840 minus 120 is $760 for the one after that. Not a very straight line. And then 7 Oh, that wasn't 840 minus 120. That should be 720, not 760. No wonder that didn't look right. I'm sorry. I'm having to back up. All right, 840 minus 120 is 720. That makes more sense. 720, and then that's for, oh, geez. I'm sorry. All right, back again. I see I shot over 1100. You probably noticed that right off the bat. That was 1080. And now we're back on track. 960. Sorry about that. 960 minus 120 is 840. We've been here before. Now we're lining up. 840 minus 120 is 720. And then from, I guess I don't really need this, but let's just, 720 minus 120 is 600. So we see the supply and demand intersect right at that sixth permit sold. And, you know, if we were going to keep buying permits, which of course there's nobody there to supply them, 480 would be the next. I undershot that time. Let me reconstruct. I can see why. For some reason today these are giving me fits. Let's see, 600 up to 640 up to 680. All right, supply curve is back together. Let's get this demand curve in shape. Sometimes these are easy for me, but today I just got a recording error. Hopefully that goes down to 600 from 720. And that's just a little bit above. No, that's, yeah, that's, there we are. Now it makes sense. That's right there. And then from 600 down to 480, something like that. All right, that's our demand curve. And so we see that, I'm going to turn this to the pointer, we see that 1,200 willing to pay, 440 willing to sell, one gets sold. Second one, 1080 willingness to pay, 480 willingness to sell, that gets sold, and so on across 5 permits. But that sixth permit costs more to provide, 640, than it's valued by firm 2. So we get 5 actually sold, and that's the same answer we got the algebraic way. The one thing that we got that was a bit of an approximation, we just decided permit price was 600 even, and it might be, but realize that for that 5th permit, the willingness to pay is 720, the opportunity cost is 600, so really we could see a price anywhere in that range. Now, moving on, the next part of this problem supposes a third firm that has a constant cleanup of 800. Let's make this third firm some other color. Make that third firm bright pink, so that they've got constant cleanup costs of 800. And how does that play out in our graph? Well, that graph, they both have a supply curve and a demand curve of 800. And there we have it. So now when we tally up who sells and who buys how many permits, we realize, well, that price is definitely going to be 800. And we see that firm 2 can outbid firm 3. We'll call that new one firm 3. It has no permits. So actually that's they're only a buyer. So that's their demand curve. They don't have any permits to supply. We see that their demand curve and firm one's supply curve coincide at that 10th permit. So let's say there's some infinitesimally small transaction costs that keeps them from trading. So then let's tally up what's going to be traded here. We get a very different result, which I'm somewhat curious about. If anybody can tell me exactly why our results are so different, I'll give some extra credit. Of course, since this is an optional methodology and harder, probably nobody's listening, but let's pretend. Here, we get firm 2 buys 1, 2, 3, 4. So Q2, remember, they were going to, without trading at all, they'd have to clean up 10. They buy 4 permits, so they're going to have to clean up 6. So we get an unambiguous. Remember the algebraic way, we got 6.67. So here you get an unambiguous. They're going to buy 4 permits, they're going to buy 4 permits. They're not going to buy any fractional permits. This is clear. Q1, since we said we said that they're not going to transact on that 10th permit. Q1 is going to be the 10 they had to clean up if they didn't trade, plus the 9 extra tons they're going to have to clean up under this permit trading. Q1 is 19. And then we see that this firm 3 bought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 permits. So Q2 is equal to 5, right? Q3 rather. They buy 5 permits. Without any permits, they'd have cleaned up 10. So they're going to clean up 5, and that's really the puzzle. We compared to our quick and dirty algebraic method, we were 1 different on firm 1. They cleaned up 1 less ton than our approximation in the algebraic methodology. Firm 2 cleaned up 0.67 less than they did in our approximation. So now we have 1.67. I guess firm 3, remember we had them predicted to clean up 3.33 in our algebraic approximation, and they end up cleaning up 1.67 more than that to clean up 5. So and this makes more sense, right? We have willing buyers, willing sellers, and discrete permits. If we can't divvy up the permits, this is what we get.